There's this fashion developed, I think probably late 80s, for bridges and architects getting involved in bridges. And so the first thing that happened is we'd get called up by architects and asked to work on bridges. And working with architects can be hard work, but working with an architect who thinks he's a bridge designer is often much more hard work than I could ever describe. And after a couple of experiences of that, we concluded here that we'd be better off doing them ourselves. I was becoming the person who would worry about what it was looking like, and other people would be worrying about whether it was going to stand up. They couldn't see that a weld was anything other than a functional entity, and I was worrying whether it was actually, pretty enough and whether it was good enough, well enough done. And that illustrated for me a little bit of that, the relationship between architect and engineer and the values each bring to a project. First of all, the detail on a bridge, a lot of it's engineering, but the detail is so much of a one. You can't have two sets of drawings for it. You have to have one set of drawings. So you may as well, if you're going to do it on the same bits of paper. And if you're going to do it on the same bits of paper, well, then you may as well do it in the same office. And we have a team of about 8 people just working on projects like this all the time. This is the Lancaster Millennium Bridge. Well, we're looking at a very early sketch, actually the sketch we took up to the competitive interview it was called for this bridge. And it was a place where the town had grown up on one side of the river in the Roman times and probably pre-Roman times, but developed across the other side. An old railway bridge had become a road bridge, and there was a single lane. You couldn't get 2 buggies past each other, footpath on this bridge, taking people back into town. And a new Tesco's had been built, literally on the hub here. And the ancient quayside, a quayside that belonged back in the slave trade and other places, here, with a tide running up just beyond this bridge here and then out again. So the river would fill every day and drop away again. The job was really to try and join these all together as a group and then launch people across the river to this over here. Of course, they're coming from the town itself, which means they're coming underneath the railway line. They're coming down from the station and out of the schools along the disused railway line, and they're visiting shops and quaysides and other activities down here on the old quay. So what we were illustrating here to our client was the sort of nature of the problem. And as you can see, it's not a straight line. There's no single bridge that we've built which is a straight line. It's just a case of making a link. Underlying all this is the sort of natural geology of Lancaster. This is a steep cliff face here, pretty much. And the river has come charging down, met the cliff face, torn around the bend. So you've got flatlands on the outside here, and you've got this edge here. And I say edge because when we came to build the bridge in the end, we literally perched it on the cliff edge, literally below the waterline here, but nonetheless, going deep down because glaciers had once scarred all this thing meters deep. So it's a lovely location, and we were given the job of getting people comfortably from one side to the other, and that's the process we were into. We were into sort of a form of transportation, but it's a nice one because you've got to imagine people. You've got to imagine what they want to do. You've got to imagine where they're coming from. So there were clues to it. We've got a site which is strong on one side and soft on the other. We've got these needs to link people up. So we set ourselves a problem, and we came from there to a solution. You come down off the viaduct, up off the quayside, and then hop across the water there. This is the foundation, which is actually on a cliff edge. I mean, there's rock down here, which literally goes down into a gorge, which is filled with the mud of the river here. So we're lucky to be able to get that hard footing here, and there's that little Madonna casting. The masthead, where you could have ears on the mast if you did it in this sort of traditional way. Actually, what we've done is cut holes in the mast and have hooked the cables into there. So they have to be hooked because they have to be unhooked. This is the new bridge in Cambridge, which is really 2 bridges. You've got to take away this piece here, this bit in front of the arch. And actually what you've got behind is one of our trademark bridges where you have a curving deck like that and the arch leaning back away from it. And part of that is this theory that we have that people don't like to be enclosed. When people build structures either side of you and you walk through it, you're not part of the landscape. And these bridges are about actually offering a platform, holding you up, the tips of the fingers. At the same time, this is a bridge in Cambridge, and of course this is the town of the cyclist. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of them, and this is a bridge which is built as part of the Sostrans route. So we expected, and quite rightly expect, quite a lot of people to use it. Different times of the day. Obviously, commuting time is going to be loads. So whilst the approaches to this bridge are one piece, and to be joined by both pedestrians and cyclists, when you actually get to the bridge, we recognise that pedestrians want to stop and their kids want to play poo sticks, whilst the cyclists want to get through. So the outer element of the bridge is a cycle track. It breaks and goes round the back of the arch to be the cycle track, while hung off the arch on the inside is the light little deck where people can rest and play and do things like that. Bridges are very much part of an environment. The approaches to this bridge rise up parallel to the road with some housing over here, then reach out across a flood meadow, literally tiptoeing across into the centre of town. It's a joy making these bridges. It's fantastic. You really are making a difference in an environment which is stood like this for hundreds, well, forever. I mean, there probably was a ferry not far away from this site in the past. But what we've done is we've actually inserted a new artery into the town, and a pedestrian or foot-fed artery, and they had the most fantastic effect. On this bridge, we're working with the artist Jerry Judah. We created a series of spinning tops, which are little benches where people will meet. And we know that our bridges are destinations in their own right. They're places where people go to meet their girlfriends or boyfriends. They're places where, well, all sorts of things happen. Little things about bridges which are worth looking at are sort of handrailing. We've developed all sorts of forms of doing handrails, and it's quite fun to see them copied occasionally. Never quite exactly, they've missed some of the points, the nuances, but we broke the tradition for vertical handrails. There was obviously this problem of, people climbing on them, but we managed to prove that if you incline the handrails in, people wouldn't climb on them or couldn't climb on them, and anyway, they look so much better. There's so much more to them emotionally than just purely a sort of the concept of a journey. It's understanding that, which is in a way why the whole business of making them from A to B is not what they're about. They are, in a way, huge pieces of sculpture. They're lovely things to make, and it's one of those pleasures one has to make them. They're much more communal than the average bit of sculpture, though. In August last year, we merged our company Whitby-Bird with Ramble, and it was one of those sort of great opportunities which comes along once in your lifetime. And in a way we did it because it actually answered a whole series of questions. I mean, and one of them was, what are we going to do next in bridge design? We've now formed ourselves into this polymath where we've got the little bridges on one scale and this bridge, the Great Belt, on the other scale. I think it's the second longest suspension bridge in the world. And we knew we could eventually grow up to make great bridges, big bridges. But I didn't think I'd have a chance in my lifetime the way it was going. So by merging with Ramble, we've actually joined ourselves with the very people who are at the sort of front end of the big bridges. And at this very point in time, we're bidding for a bridge that's going to link Denmark into Germany. And it's a fantastic project, one of those once in a decade projects for the bridge designers. Imagine what the Great Belt Bridge did for Denmark, the one that links Copenhagen to Malmö in Sweden. These are things which just transformed, rather like our Channel Tunnel has transformed Britain's relationship with Europe. These transform the way people live. They're at another level up in terms of the economic contribution they make to society. The most dramatic or most demonstrable contribution engineers can make